Long ago in a distant time, I stumbled across a game called Stronghold 2, which unbeknownst to me would ignite my passion for medieval RTS strategy slash village building games, which would turn out to be a pretty varied genre. For the most part, this genre ends up splitting either one direction or the other, focusing on the combat, like games like Chivalry or Mordhau, where it leans more towards the directional combat system and more towards you being a soldier on the battlefield. Or you have a little bit of the RTS elements and stuff like Age of Empires. You have more grand strategy games similar to like Crusader Kings. And then you have something like Medieval Total War, which is a much older game, but despite it technically having the mixture of real-time battlefield strategy with more economy management in the background, it just never quite felt right to me. And I guess that's what this video is really about. Another attempt at trying to find the perfect balance between a medieval lord management sim and a real-time medieval strategy commander game. To date, the closest thing I've found to scratch that itch that Stronghold 2 put in me is the Mountain Blade franchise. Starting with Mountain Blade Warband, I played it much after it came out, but got it on sale for $5, and it's really a fun RPG in the medieval setting, really letting you capture the experience of what it's like to be a peasant rising through the ranks to try to become a freeman, a new established lord, a mercenary, a trader, whatever you really want to be. And while Warband didn't completely fulfill that promise, the sequel, Bannerlord, has come a long way in what it set out to do. But as is the problem with these kind of games that try to balance the economic aspect of building your own village versus the more combat-focused aspect of commanding your own levy. And since the Mountain Blade franchise actually has a sizable population of its audience that enjoys the multiplayer combat aspect of the game, the developers are kind of forced to choose more towards the combat aspect of the game. That doesn't mean there isn't some nice opportunities that they've expanded upon with trading and upgrading castles and cities, but the game is still very much combat focused. Clearly, by the name of the game, Manor Lords, they're subtly hinting at they're trying to go after the Bannerlord genre. And what has set Manor Lords apart and piqued a lot of interest in this community, for those of us who were wishing that Bannerlord had more fleshed out ways of building up villages or building your own castles, Manor Lords is here to answer that call. Manor Lords is here to let us build our own village and still give us a great opportunity for medieval combat simulation. Recently, they released a demo, and that's what I've been playing here. And the demo is only for the village management system. And being completely honest, it feels very familiar. There's nothing really all that new about this, which is fine. You don't really have to reinvent the wheel with this kind of stuff. If I was to compare it to anything, it's similar to games like Banished, even another early access game that I've played on here before called Foundation. However, Foundation focuses more on letting you customize your buildings. That's not really what happens here. It simplifies the buildings a little bit, but there is a cool little feature where if you build, you have an option to build hovels as big as you want, but if you build them far enough, you can add extensions like chicken, vegetable, or goat farms, which provide you with eggs, vegetables, or milk in exchange. This is kind of a unique way to do this. That way it's breaking up some of the monotony of building pastures and stuff like games like Life is Feudal, Forest Village, where, you know, every animal goes in the pasture and then you gotta do all that. This allows you to have chickens and goats and stuff without having to do the whole pasture setup. And it gives you some passive food income, which is really useful as I've found out trying to play through the game. This being an early access demo, it definitely doesn't hold your hand at all. One problem I found myself facing is that it wanted me to upgrade my hovels to level 2, and I guess I skipped through the objective or the help thing, or maybe there even wasn't any, because I wound up running out of resources pretty quickly because I'd misallocated them. I accidentally upgraded my granary instead of saving up the resources to build the necessary buildings. See, in order to upgrade your houses, you actually have to have religion, ale, 2 types of clothing, and 2 types of food. And I had not realized that at the time. And it takes a while to get things like ale production up and going, not to mention building a church, but luckily, unlike games like Stronghold, where churches require things like candles, the church doesn't seem to require anything as of right now. Another mistake I made was not building more burrows, the houses in the game, fast enough. You can pretty much build them anywhere as long as you take up enough space, and it instinctively clings to like roads and other building surfaces. So you can build some in some weird organic shapes to really fill in your village. And don't worry about any privacy concerns because it gives them a nice little privacy fence around their entire little house. The reason why this was such a problem is in some games you have villagers come and then they will be homeless until you build them a house, and then the happiness kind of balances out and people will stop coming if they're not happy. Well, in this game, no one will come to your village until you build a house for them other than the initial 5 families. Which gets into another unique feature of this game. Unlike other games where the game focuses on individual peasants, this game focuses more on families and family industries. So when you assign a worker to a specific area like the Woodcutter's Lodge, you're not just assigning that worker, you're assigning that worker's entire family to work in that area, which is useful because then you have more than one. But it can get confusing sometimes, forgetting that, oh wait, I have 20 people but only 7 families. It's something you have to pay attention to because stuff like resources like food and fuel is based on how many people you have, not how many families you have. Only one family per house, but a family can be a varied amount of people. I really appreciate this feature and hope it stays in the game for later development. And maybe make it just a little easier to keep track of. One big thing I hope they work on later on is just how much time it takes to do things. You start off with only 5 families, and it can take a while, especially if you're trying to balance the amount of people you have with the amount of resources you can produce at once, which is a hard game to play. Don't go building every burrow because you might run out of fuel in winter and you might run out of food in winter, and then you're dead. Everyone's dead all at once. Trust me, it happened to me twice. But to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with time management, I built a field to grow some barley, and it has 4 phases that it keeps track of: the plowing, the seeding, the growing, and the harvest. And some of them can overlap, so you can have crops growing and crops ready to harvest at the same time that you're seeding. But the plowing has to be done the whole field first before you can start that. Just the plowing alone, I started in March because it doesn't let you plow during the winter. It will let you plow in the fall, though, if you get the whole field harvested in enough time. But it took from March all the way to May just to plow one small field, which is ridiculous. That being said, it was only one family, but Again, these worker slots aren't individual peasants, they're supposed to be entire families. I don't know about you, but I think my family could plow a field in that amount of time quite a bit faster. A couple tips I can give if anybody's going into it: don't underestimate the value of trading. This is something I learned the hard way, that in order to get livestock, you pretty much have to buy it from another village. Something like chickens, when you build a chicken upgrade, it will cost silver to buy the chickens for your chicken coop, but other than that, you don't actually have to import the chickens, really, or the goat for those upgrades. But to get animals in a pasture like sheep, which you'll need for wool to grow a different kind of clothing, other than just hunting leather, you will also have to import the sheep, which means you have to build a livestock trader, which is separate from the goods trader. They're two completely separate buildings, and you need somebody assigned at both if you want to trade both resources. In my opinion, I found that the best way to make money was selling my extra hides, because I was producing a lot more leather than I needed, and I was needing some gold to buy more animals. I haven't tested it yet, but I have a theory that if I had more oxen, that I could have been moving resources around a lot faster, buildings would have got done faster, probably wouldn't have had as much trouble. But that requires me stopping production on something else and focusing on building a trade thing and then assigning a family. That's another thing that's really confusing, is like assigning a family to certain jobs seems to assign only one person, like with the farm, but assigning worker slots to like a woodcutter assigns the whole family. Or does it? It's not really clear. Assignments, as it shows in the top left corner, are for families, not for individuals. But in the game, a lot of the times when you assign a worker slot, it only assigns one individual person. So if they're going to continue to do the whole family mechanic, I wish they would make it a little more clear on what is a worker and what is a family assignment. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on Manor Lords so far, and I'm definitely going to be following this some more, especially once we get to have our hands on with the actual combat, see how that plays out, because the game does already have some systems in place for like levying your workers into soldiers, and I want to see how that develops up and see how that'll affect your economy. That could be a serious problem if you're sending your men off to work. That's fewer people that you have that can hunt, fish, farm, whatever you need to do. So is that going to hurt your economy a lot when you go off to battle? I'm curious to see how that works. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.